Just feel like, I did something right in life with him.
It will never go away. It'll always be with me. And I think I saw somewhere the sadness is a reminder of how much...
The pain never fully leaves. It just settles into the spaces between memories, becoming part of the silence. A silence that now echoes louder than ever since Malcolm-Jamal Warner's sudden and mysterious death. His voice, once warm and familiar, now haunts the footage of his final day, a day that started with a smile and ended with questions that no one seems eager to answer. Malcolm was supposed to grow old, supposed to watch his daughter grow into the woman he believed she could be, supposed to walk her down the aisle and see her achievements become his legacy, but instead, he came home in a box. The official story, a drowning accident in Costa Rica, has always felt too clean, too convenient, too fast. Witnesses present at the beach tell a much more painful and heroic version, that Malcolm died trying to save his daughter from a deadly current, fighting for her life in the waves with everything he had. But that part was wiped from the record. According to the official narrative, his daughter was never in the water, and yet a surfer swore he saw her struggling in the tide. Another claimed the Red Cross tended to her on the sand. And still, the record says otherwise. Within 24 hours of his death, before the public even had time to grieve, before his daughter could even say goodbye, his wife allegedly transferred over $12 million in assets into her own name, allegedly denied an autopsy, allegedly demanded a rapid cremation, and locked down control of the estate. Then came Regina King, the woman who once held Malcolm's heart. She didn't accuse anyone directly, but her presence, her tribute, her eyes told a different story. Malcolm wasn't just an actor, wasn't just Theo from The Cosby Show. He was a man with a mission. He had secrets, something called Theopiles, and a chilling warning in an email to a trusted friend. If anything happens to me, know it wasn't an accident. That one sentence has upended everything. This wasn't just about how Malcolm died, but why and who stood to benefit from silencing him. The setting, Cockles Beach in Costa Rica, was too perfect, the timing too neat. That morning, Malcolm posted a short, beautiful clip of him with his daughter, a flower behind his ear she had given him. "There's always a reason to smile," he said. Hours later, his body was pulled from the water. The reports were quick, polished, identical accidental drowning. No foul play, daughter not in the water. But the people who were there say otherwise. Witnesses describe panic, chaos, and a father's desperate fight against a powerful rip current. They say Malcolm went in after his daughter without hesitation, that she was treated onshore, that CPR on Malcolm was delayed due to confusion and lack of proper protocol. Yet none of that made it into the official report. No mention of heroism, no recognition of what he did, just silence. And while the silence settled, his wife allegedly called her lawyer, not to plan a funeral, but to change the estate. She allegedly denied the daughter even one last look at her father before pushing for immediate cremation. Why the rush? Why no autopsy? Why erase the chance to uncover the truth? Because, as some suggest, ashes don't talk. The only thing that did was Malcolm's email, that final line, that gut-punching sentence that turned the entire narrative on its head. Around the same time, Regina King posted her quiet tribute, a photo of Malcolm on his motorcycle, a message about lasting energy. No accusations, but the weight behind her words was unmistakable. Regina had known tragedy herself, having lost her own son in a way that left a scar she never truly spoke of again. Her love story with Malcolm had ended without explanation, no closure, just a silent cut-off. But she didn't disappear. She watched, she remembered, and now she speaks through quiet shadows. Malcolm's files, the so-called Theopiles, were allegedly encrypted, hidden, protected, and filled with evidence that could shift the public's perception of some of the biggest names in entertainment. The leak of a private email confirmed that Malcolm believed someone might come after him. "If anything happens to me, know it wasn't an accident." That is not grief talking. That is fear deep, urgent, and final. So when fans started asking why Malcolm's death felt scripted, it wasn't just paranoia. The police chief who signed off on the initial report wasn't even at the scene. Witnesses were allegedly warned not to speak. Lifeguards were off duty on a beach known for strong currents. Emergency resources were rerouted. Add to that the alleged financial moves by his wife, the speed of the cremation, and the complete erasure of eyewitness accounts, and it becomes impossible not to question everything. Reddit exploded with theories, hashtags trended, fans dissected the timeline down to the minute. Some claimed the Thea piles contained scandalous secrets about celebrity figures, powerful politicians, and billionaires with a lot to lose. Others said the files included financial crimes, private communications, and evidence of decades-long cover-ups. Whatever was in those files, Malcolm believed it could change everything. That belief cost him everything. Regina King has stayed mostly silent since then. Her words are few but heavy. Maybe she knows more than she's saying. Maybe she's waiting. Maybe she's afraid. But one thing is clear: the truth didn't die with Malcolm. It was buried, and buried truth never stays quiet for long. The whispers grow louder. The footage of his final birthday with his daughter, the flower behind his ear, his laughter, all of it now feels like a goodbye he never planned to make. The last 24 hours of Malcolm's life were not just a tragedy. They were a cover-up, and we are only beginning to see the cracks in the surface. This is not over, not even close. The world often forgets that fame does not shield you from pain, and sometimes it even amplifies it. Malcolm-Jamal Warner lived most of his life in the spotlight, known for his wisdom, calm presence, and refusal to let Hollywood scandals define him. Yet the darkness that surrounded his final moments has cracked open an ugly truth many would rather ignore. While his death was officially ruled a tragic drowning, the people closest to him, those who knew his heart, his habits, and most importantly, his fears, are raising questions that simply refuse to die. His wife's actions in the hours following his death have come under sharp scrutiny. While most grieving spouses can barely function after such a loss, she was, according to those involved, quick to make moves that suggested calculation rather than mourning. The rapid cremation order, the suppression of the autopsy request, and the alleged freezing out of Malcolm's own daughter from the final rites all point to an agenda that goes far beyond sorrow. Then came the files, the Thea piles, a rumored archive Malcolm had been assembling in private. Some described it as a memoir, others as a digital time capsule. But what everyone seems to agree on is that it contained more than just memories. Malcolm was not the kind of man to gossip or make baseless accusations, but he did believe in telling the truth, and in the weeks before his death, he reportedly told a close confidant that he was preparing to finally say what needed to be said. And then came that chilling line in the email: "If anything happens to me, know it wasn't an accident." At first, it read like fear, the kind that creeps in late at night when you feel watched. But now, in hindsight, it feels like prophecy. The context of the email becomes even more troubling when tied to the unconfirmed but persistent rumors of pressure Malcolm faced from undisclosed sources in the industry. It is alleged that he received veiled threats after a podcast episode where he openly criticized the selective memory of Hollywood, especially when it came to Black voices and narratives. He had started speaking more boldly in the months leading up to his death, and some claim that this shift in tone was not well received. At one point, he even referenced the machine, a term often used to describe the invisible but powerful network of control within the industry. His wife's connection to certain executive circles and her swift legal maneuvers after his death have only fueled the suspicions. More than one family friend has anonymously claimed that Malcolm had planned to revise his will just days before the trip to Costa Rica, allegedly with the intention of making his daughter the primary beneficiary. But that revision never happened. Instead, The old will stood a will that left most of his estate to his wife, a decision that now sits uncomfortably with many who saw the strain in their relationship during his final months. Meanwhile, Regina King's quiet presence in the background has become one of the most emotionally charged elements of this tragedy. She has not spoken publicly beyond a few heartfelt but cryptic posts, yet her silence speaks volumes. Friends say that Regina and Malcolm had recently reconnected, not romantically but emotionally, bonding again over shared losses and frustrations about the state of the world. Some claim that Malcolm had confided in Regina about the Theopiles and his fears regarding what might happen if he went public with them. There are whispers, just whispers, that Regina may even have access to part of that archive. Whether true or not, her grief appears layered, not just mourning for a friend, but perhaps also for the truths he never got to share. And as the investigation stalls and media coverage fades, fans are keeping the questions alive. How could a man so cautious, so family-focused, and so physically fit die in such a preventable way? Why did so many first-hand witness reports contradict the official timeline? Why did the emergency services respond so slowly? And why were lifeguards reportedly missing on a beach known for dangerous rip currents? Why was his daughter's presence in the water erased from the record? Most importantly, why has there been no public response from the Costa Rican authorities, no press conference, no transparency? In the age of information, this kind of silence is not just suspicious, it is strategic. When information is this tightly controlled, it usually means someone has something to hide. The surfboard rental shop owner, who claims to have seen the entire rescue attempt, says he was never questioned by authorities. The American tourist who performed CPR insists that paramedics took over 20 minutes to arrive. These inconsistencies are not minor details, they are the difference between life and death. And yet, the official report remains unchanged. Malcolm's cremation ensured there would be no second opinions, no private autopsy, no chance for the truth to rise from the ashes. But the people who knew and loved him continue to speak, even if only in hushed tones. Some of Malcolm's oldest friends have begun gathering records, emails, voice notes, video clips, trying to piece together his final months like a puzzle that could explain the unexplainable. Others are working through encrypted backups, hoping to find any trace of the elusive Theopiles. What were they? Why did Malcolm refer to them as a bomb waiting to go off? Was it simply a poetic metaphor, or did he actually possess something powerful enough to be considered dangerous? As the days pass, more questions arise than answers. But one truth is certain: Malcolm-Jamal Warner was not a man prone to panic or paranoia. If he was afraid, it was for a reason. If he left behind warnings, they should be taken seriously. And if he hinted at secrets, then someone, somewhere, is working very hard to keep those secrets buried. His fans, his real friends, and those who still believe in justice are not giving up. They are sifting through every post, every clip, every shred of evidence to find what was hidden in plain sight. Because Malcolm's story doesn't end in Costa Rica. It doesn't end in silence, and it doesn't end until the truth is finally told. In the final stretch of Malcolm-Jamal Warner's story, the sorrow lingers like a shadow that refuses to fade, wrapping itself around the questions still unanswered and the silence that continues to stretch beyond reason. His death was not just a loss to his family, friends, or fans. It was a shock to the foundation of Black Hollywood. To those who had watched him grow from a child star into a thoughtful, measured adult who spoke with care and moved with purpose. Malcolm had survived what so many others had not. The child actor curse, the public scandals, the identity crises, and the industry's hunger for self-destruction. He avoided tabloid drama, kept his relationships private after painful heartbreaks, and focused on telling meaningful stories through his acting, music, poetry, and most recently, his podcast. That podcast, Not Allhood, became more than just a creative outlet. It became a space where Malcolm was finally able to speak without filters, without scripts, without approval. And in those final episodes, just days before his death, He was speaking louder than ever before. He talked about the weight of surviving as a black man in America, about how the narratives surrounding black communities had been hijacked and sold back to them in fragments of trauma. He pushed back against the glamorization of struggle and the erasure of dignity, insisting that black excellence is not about awards, but about surviving plain and simple. And he questioned why so many powerful black voices have been silenced right as they were beginning to say something real. In one of his last recorded reflections, he said, "Black survival in and of itself is black excellence." It wasn't a sound bite, it was a thesis, one that hit even harder once the world realized those words would be among his last. That final podcast episode, raw, reflective, and full of layered grief, was the opposite of casual. It sounded like a man saying goodbye, and maybe, just maybe, Malcolm knew something was coming. Maybe he had been warned. Maybe he had seen enough to know how these things go. It would not be the first time a black entertainer's life ended suddenly, mysteriously, and with just enough confusion to make the public move on before asking the right questions. But his fans have not moved on, and neither have the people closest to him. His daughter, still a teenager, is now reportedly under the tight guardianship of the same woman who allegedly denied her the right to see her father's body before cremation. His mother, though rarely in the public eye, has allegedly expressed doubts about the official story. And Regina King, whose own life has been shaped by grief, remains a haunting figure in this tale, someone who knew the man, not just the actor, and whose silence has spoken louder than any statement. As fans comb through old interviews, social media posts, and public appearances, one thing becomes clear: Malcolm had started to distance himself from the machine. He was no longer just playing the game. He was preparing to expose it. Those rumored files, the Theopiles, are said to contain a mixture of personal memories, industry secrets, and digital documentation of stories. Malcolm had either lived or been told stories that could, if true, cause irreversible damage to certain figures and systems. No one knows where the files are now. Some say he encrypted them so heavily that not even his own wife could access them. Others believe he gave copies to trusted allies, including Regina, before his trip to Costa Rica. But what matters more than the files is the context. Malcolm had reached a point where he felt the truth needed to come out, no matter the cost. That conviction, that urgency, is what sets this tragedy apart from so many others. His final months weren't marked by chaos or erratic behavior. They were filled with clarity, with purpose, with the slow but steady preparation to make peace with the life he had lived and the truths he was ready to reveal. That alone is enough to make his death feel suspicious. And then there's the pattern, a disturbing one, that fans have pointed out repeatedly. Every time a prominent black entertainer begins to speak openly about injustice, about corruption, about the systems designed to exploit them, something happens. Sometimes it's a scandal, sometimes it's financial ruin, and sometimes far too often it's death. Malcolm's story now joins the ranks of those silenced too soon, but this story refuses to end quietly. The last image we have of him is a short video clip, posted just hours before his death, of him laughing with his daughter, accepting a flower from her, placing it behind his ear, and saying, "There's always a reason to smile." That clip, now etched into the memory of everyone who loved him, feels more like a goodbye than anyone could have realized at the time. And the footage from the beach, the real footage, not the cleaned-up reports, is still out there. Witnesses have come forward anonymously, journalists have started poking around again, and independent investigators are piecing together timelines that don't quite add up. The fight for the truth is not over. If anything, it's just beginning. Malcolm-Jamal Warner was more than Theo, more than an actor, more than a symbol of black family life on television. He was a man with something to say, and the world should have listened while it still had the chance. Now we owe it to him, to his daughter, his true friends, and to the truth itself to listen more carefully. Because sometimes the most devastating truths are not the ones shouted from stages or broadcast on screens, but the ones whispered in quiet emails, encoded in final podcasts, or left behind in the eyes of those who knew what he meant, even when he didn't say it out loud. Malcolm didn't just leave a legacy. He left a trail, and if we follow it, we may finally understand why he had to go and who didn't want him to stay.